I've got a question from Hannah in Debbie, New York. We're not going, love. So Hannah's question was, after everything I've been through, do I see life differently? And it's a bit of a, I said I would, and I said that I would never be the same I was with work as I was before I was poorly. Because I used to work ridiculous hours for British Gas and travel the length and breadth of the country for the company. But once I felt well again, then I just wanted life to go back to normal as much as possible. So I do think about things differently, but I probably evaluate things more than I did before, but I still do all the things that I did before. So I still do stupid hours for work and things. But I do say no to things that I probably wouldn't have done before. And there's some things that I can't do because my body's knackered. Yeah, it's difficult, that one, because on one level I do, and in another level I really don't. I just sort of I just get on with things as best I can, I guess. So yes, I guess, Hannah. Hi, Paul. Um, yeah, I guess I do, because I evaluate things differently, and I try to focus on family things first, but I still do ridiculous hours for work, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And then I've got another question, which is from my niece, Rebecca. And she says, in hindsight, do I wish I'd told Luke? And 100% yes. If I could turn back time, whilst whilst we told him something, all we said to him was that when I had my operation, when I was pregnant with Olivia, they found something that was bad and I needed to go in and have it taken away. So we didn't technically lie, we just didn't tell him it was cancer. But I think because he'd heard whispers from everybody, and snippets of conversations, he then built that into something that was 100 times worse as far as he was concerned. So yes, I do wish that we'd told him. And I cover that off later on in the book. So I'll cover that on Friday because it's in chapter 9. So I'll go back to, we were up to 5 and 6. So at the end of last night, I had just told Michelle on the way home from hospital. So after that, John and I went for lunch at a local pub, obviously to talk about what had gone on in the appointment. And and when we were talking about it, like I said last night, the biggest thing that came out of that meeting for me was that they were going to take my belly button, which I know now is ridiculous. And we chatted, and I said, look, I'm not bothered about what they take away internally, but I'm not having that operation. For one, it's 12 hours. The mortality rate is high. And they're going to take my belly button, and I'll never be the same again. And of course, looking back, that's ridiculous. And he was trying to be all rational, and I was being totally irrational. And he said, "Oh, right then. So, what shall we put on your gravestone? Here lies Lindsay Jones." Mother. I can't remember what he said now. Mother, wife, and I think it was something like, she wants she wanted to keep a belly button or something. It was something about my belly button, and I knew at the time. I just said to him, "Oh, you're being stupid," and he was like, "No, you're being stupid." And looking back, I obviously was, and I knew I was being ridiculous. and I had to have the operation because they'd already told me that without the operation, I only had a 15% chance of survival. So it was never going to be that I wasn't going to have the operation. I was just being ridiculous. And then a few days went by, and then Christie's got in touch to say that they had their meeting and they were happy for us to wait, and they were going to give me until after the Easter holidays so that we could do the things that we wanted to do. So the only thing they said was I'd have to have another scan because the gap, because they knew it was already spreading, the gap was too big for them to use that scan. I would have to have another scan nearer the time, and new bloods and everything done, which was that was fine. I wasn't bothered about that. So all that they proceeded to book me in for I think originally it was the end of April because Easter was at the beginning of April. And we booked our holiday. We booked to go to Lanzarote over the school holidays because the weather. It was the only place really that we thought was quite a short flight and the weather was going to be good. And then I think one morning when we were getting all our stuff together to go on holiday, we were making the bed, and I just said to John, if you want to leave and get a divorce, then now is the time to do it. He was like, I beg your pardon. And I said, well, I'm never going to be the same again, regardless of how well the operation goes. My body will never be the same again. And he was just like, well, he didn't really know where I was coming from, and he was adamant that he wasn't going anywhere, and whatever happened, and we would face it together, which was quite nice because I think at that time I'd sort of got it in my head that if anything was going to happen like that, then it needed to be then, because then I could deal with it and move on and then deal with the operation and everything else that came with it. And I think having a new baby would help with both those things, because having Olivia gave me a focus to focus on her rather than feeling sorry for myself. And if John had chosen that route, then that I would have been the same, because I'd have had Olivia to focus on. But of course he said I was being ridiculous. We booked Olivia's christening for when we got back from holiday, so because it all needed to be done very close together, of course, because the operation needed to be done as soon as. We booked it for a local pub, and they had a big, it was like a big blow up dice. It's a big blow up cube that you could have functions in. So we booked that because it was something a little bit different. And we booked it to get her christened at the church where Luke was christened, which was a local church. And the vicar was a bit. He made us do. He knew the circumstances, and he still made us do christening classes. So we had to go to. Well, we had to attend christening classes for 6 weeks in the lead up before we went on holiday. And because I was poorly, and obviously I hadn't long had Olivia, we held the christening classes for all the parents that he was making do it at our house. Oh, it was horrendous. It was just one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever done, because we didn't have to do that when we had Luke. But the vicar was a bit strict with that. He wouldn't let us get her christened if we didn't attend the classes. And then we went. Holiday time came. We took Luke out just for one day, which school said was okay under the circumstances. Off we went on our holiday. Holiday was great. We met some great people. We had a really nice family holiday. And then towards the end of the holiday, I don't know if you all remember, but the ash cloud came and caused absolute chaos with people either getting to their holiday or people getting stuck on holiday. And that happened to us. It couldn't have been at worse time, because of course we were due to come back and have Olivia christened. and the stress of it was just ridiculous. So I was on the phone to family, and I had to ring Christina and ask her to speak to the vicar, and say if if there's potentially we're not going to get back, because Thompson didn't know when the flights were going to be. So I said, can you ask him if we can change the date until the week after? And I asked her to contact the pub as well, where we were having the function, which she did. So she went to the vicar and asked him if he would possibly be able to change the date for us to the week after. And he ummed and ahed and ummed and ahed. And when she rung me, she said, well, he wasn't very happy about it, but he has agreed to it. So she said, I have pointed out that the ash cloud is an act of God. Well, that for me, I just wet myself. That just went to show what kind of person he actually was. That he wasn't willing to accommodate something where there was no chance of us getting back from Lanzarote, and there was nothing we could do about it. But he did say that if need be, he would move it. Thankfully, we didn't have to, because we got back. We were stuck there for 6 days longer than we should have been, but we got back a few days before. We missed our last christening class, and he nearly wasn't going to let her be christened. Yeah. To say he was a vicar, he wasn't very nice. But the christening went ahead. Everybody had a great day. Olivia looked gorgeous, in her little monsoon tiered cream dress and a little bolero jacket with my christening day written on a bib and a fluffy socks and stuff. She did. She looked dead cute. But she slept for most of the day. She was awake in the church for a little bit, and then when we got to the venue, she pretty much slept for most of it. Um, so a few people got cuddles, but I don't think as many as would have liked to have got cuddles off her. Um, it was hard that day, of course, because everybody's there, laughing and joking. But as people drunk more, and everybody obviously knew my operation was pending, as they got more and more drunk, people got more and more emotional. So by like 5 o'clock, I'd had enough because I wanted to enjoy the day. So I just said to John, the cube we had till 7 o'clock that night. So I just said, you and Luke stay. I'm gonna take Liv and go home, and I'm just gonna chill for a bit. So Olivia and I got a taxi home, and just went and chilled out, and Luke and John stayed, which was fine. And then over the next few weeks, I wanted to get Olivia in. She was still in our room, and I wanted to get her into her own room and sleeping through, so that when I went into hospital, John didn't have that to deal with as well, I guess, as well as everything else. So we moved her in, and it was weird because, of course, she'd been at the bottom of our bed in a little cot. Um, and you can hear them breathing and you're listening all the time. And then when she'd gone, I mean, obviously I had a baby monitor, but it's not the same as knowing that they're at the bottom of the bed. So the first few nights I was probably awake more than I needed to be because she didn't really bother that much. We'd put, because she had a dummy, we'd put like dummies randomly scattered around the cot so that if she woke up, she could just put one in and go back to sleep. And for a few nights, she did on and off. We had to get up a few times, but she wasn't bad overall. And then this particular night, we'd had a few really good nights, and then this one night, she was crying, and it felt like forever, but it must have been about 10 minutes. And John was like, oh, I'll have to go in, I'll have to go in. And I was like, you get out of this bed and go in, and I will kill you, because we just need to hang on, and she'll go back to sleep. And he was like, no, I need to go in, need to go in. I wouldn't have killed him, obviously, but there was no way I was letting him get out of our bedroom to go and see her. And thankfully, she must have come across a dummy and put it in, and off she went. And then there was a few more nights where she was a bit up and down, but within, I don't know, within 2 weeks, that's it. She was sleeping through, and she's been a great sleeper ever since. She sleeps for 12 hours plus most of the time. And then I can't think what. It's hard when you're trying to just do chapters. I think after that, I had my letter to say, your appointment for my scan, and my bloods had come, and that then it was a bit like, wow, this is really happening, which was, obviously I knew it was coming, but it was a reality, I guess. Then it had all been talk up until that point, but it was becoming a reality, and that was hard. So when I went for my scan, Michelle and Simon came across again to have Olivia and sort Luke out if need be. Um, and they'd had to do the same then, sorry, when I went for my pre-op. And I don't even know if they still do it anymore, but they used to do like an MRSA test and stuff like that, your blood pressure and like your liver function and your kidney function. They did all that in the pre-op, and all that came back fine. I was fine. So the operation date was booked in, and then I decided that because the mortality rate was so high with the operation, that I would write each one of them a letter. So I did a letter for John, a letter for Luke, and a letter for Liv. And I say it quite matter of factly that I wrote them all a letter. It was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life. In John's letter, I said I was happy for him to meet. You know, we were only in our 30s. I was happy for him to meet somebody else. But if he did meet somebody else, she needed to be somebody that looked after the kids like I would have looked after the kids. No, like wicked stepmother. Because in the letter I put on there, that if he went with somebody nasty, then I would come back and haunt him. And I still stand by that now. If that had have happened, 100%, I'd have been back and I would have haunted him. In Luke's letter, I put that I was sorry that I couldn't be around. He needed to help his dad look after his sister. At the time, he was really into football, and he everybody thought he could have been a professional footballer. And I put in there, stick with your football. You can be anything you want to be. And in Olivia's letter, I just told her that I was really sorry I couldn't be around. I tried to be around as long as I could, and I thanked her, because if it hadn't have been for her, they wouldn't have even had the chance to do the operation in the first place. But writing them, the amount of times that I changed what was in them, and the amount of times I had to change the paper because I'd cried on it so much, while writing them, because while you're writing it, obviously you know that if they're going to get to read them, you're not there anymore, and that in itself is like hard. And they didn't know I'd written them, and I didn't want them to know that I'd written them, because I only wanted to see them if they needed to. So I asked Christina, if she would have them, and not give them straight away if I didn't make it, but to give them when the time was right. Because I think if they'd have had them straight away, if anything would have happened, I don't think what I'd put in the letters for them would have, I want to say be appreciated, but I don't mean it like that. I don't think it would have come across as heartfelt as I meant it when I was writing it. So I said when the time is right, and she would know when that time was right, because Christina's been friends with John since they were at school. And I've known Christina since the boys were born, because Daniel is the same age as Luke. Um, so so she she didn't want to take the letters, bless her. Um, and she was like, "Well, when? How do I know when to give them?" Well, I think she would have known when that time was right. And she's still got those letters today, so she won't part with them. Um, and then once I'd done that, I guess I was ready. Then I was ready to go in. I was mentally prepared for what was coming, and what the outcome might be. And then it was about, I don't know, a week and a half maybe before I was due to go in. I got a call from Kay, a lady at the hospital, and she said to me that she was really sorry, but an emergency had come up and they needed to put my operation back a week. And I obviously wasn't distraught because I didn't want the operation, but I was mentally prepared for it. So it was really hard to accept that I had to wait longer, because of course I was anxious about it. I felt sick. I was worried about what was going to happen. Um, but we had plans in place for the kids. Um, what John with work and stuff. So I was just like, oh my god. But obviously I understood that if an emergency's come up, then an emergency's come up, and somebody needs that care more than I did at the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have asked me to put it back. So we agreed on a new date, and I got a new letter with my admission date and stuff. Um, and then it was a week later. So they were taking me in the day before the operation to get me prepped ready for, because I'd have to go down at 6 the next morning. So I went in, and I had to be there for 9:30. So we dropped the kids off with John's mum, and she was going to make sure Luke got to school okay, and then obviously she was going to have Olivia until John came back. So we went to the hospital, got all checked in. The staff there are amazing. They try and make you feel as comfortable as possible with what's coming. So they checked me in, did all my blood pressure and everything, and then Mr. Renahan, one of Mr. Wilson's team, who we worked with, he came to see me about what was going to happen. And we chatted through the process, because he was the one that was going to be doing my operation. We chatted through. He went through my latest scan. He said that he would be bringing a gynecologist up later to speak to me, because of my age. He needed to go through what the implications of having my ovaries and my uterus and stuff removed. So that was fine. And then he said, and then there'll be a lady that comes to talk about where your colostomy bag will go. I was like, pardon? And he said, well, obviously, as part of the operation, we might have to take part of your bowel away, and you might end up with a colostomy bag. And I was like, oh my god. I hadn't even, obviously they told me what they were going to take away potentially in the consultation months before, but I just hadn't even thought about it. um so I was like, oh right, okay. And then he went away, and I was like, that, oh my god. um and he come back later with the gynecologist, and the gynecologist was lovely, and he was like, I have asked them that if they don't have to take those things away, that they leave them. And I was like, no, 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 no. There's more risk if they leave them. And he was like, no. The implications on your body are worse if they take them away because of your age. And I was like, God, right, okay. Um, and then he went off, and then this lady arrived about this colostomy bag, and she says to me, right, okay, stand up, and can you just like take your jeans down and do this?" And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "Well, I need to know what sort of clothes you wear, because then I'll need to know where to put the marks for where they need to put the holes for your bag." And I was like, "Oh my god." Um, and she was like, "And it'll be this big, and this'll what it is, what it'll need space for." And I was like, "But I wear like skinny jeans and stuff." And she was like, "Well, you just have to change what you wear then, won't you?" That was a bit insensitive. But I guess when she's doing it all the time, it's quite matter of fact to her. But like, it was a big thing for me. Um, so she did what she needed to do. I had little like felt tip marks all over me with where they'd put things in and then where things had come out. Um, and when looking back on it now, it's quite funny because I didn't end up with one, but I potentially could have done. I had those marks on me for ages because, of course, I went to intensive care first, and then another ward where I couldn't have a shower or anything. They just bed bathed me, lovely. Um, so she went, and then it came to the time where John needed to go. Um, and I told him that I didn't want him to come on the day of my operation because because the operation was so long, I wanted him to stay at home and focus on the kids. Um, and he wasn't keen, to be fair, but I said, "Well, I'll text in the morning before I go because it's going to be ridiculously early, and then I'll ring you after it's happened." Um, so off he went to sort the kids out, and I spoke to him later on. Um, and they were fine as far as Luke was concerned. It was just a run-of-the-mill operation, so he wasn't that fussed about speaking to me and stuff, which was fine. And obviously lived with Tiny, so um, and then on the morning of the operation, they woke me up just before 6, and asked me to go to the bathroom and put my gown on and my lovely paper knickers that you have to wear, um, which obviously I did. And then they come and do all your checks and stuff. And I'm allergic to Septrim, which I don't even know what it is, but it's a childhood thing. So they put my red band on and prepared me. And then the porter rocked up with me wheelchair to wheel me off and wheel me down. And I was like really anxious, and felt sick. And I just texted John and said, "Right, I'm off. So I'll see you on the other side. Give the kids big kisses and etc. I love you. Speak to you later," type thing, as if it was like nothing. Um, and then they took me down. The anaesthetist gave me it gave it me in my back, so I was like sat on the edge of the bed, and he put whatever he needed to into my back. And then they lay me down, and I'm talking away to Kay, the lady that had rung me to, because she came with me, the lady that had rung to change my appointment originally. And I think probably within 10 seconds of talking to her, that was it, I must have been gone. um and then when I woke up, I was in recovery, and obviously I'd woke up, and that was an oh my god moment. Like, I have made it, I'm alive. And she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And she said, "I'm gonna ring John and tell him that you're okay." And I said, "Well, I don't want him to come." But I did want him to come, but I wanted him to sort the kids out more. Um, and she was like, "Right, okay, but I'll tell him that you're okay." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then I don't remember much about recovery. And then they moved me, um, from recovery to like their intensive care, the high dependency unit. And like, I've watched Holby City before, and like they just like have major surgery, and then they're back on a ward drinking a cup of tea and having a piece of toast half an hour later. And naively, that's what I thought was going to happen. Oh my god! When I woke up in HDU, I can't tell you how many tubes, wires, machines, slings, and things were all hanging like around me. Um, I've still got the scars, so I'll never be able to forget it. Um, I had lines sewn into my wrists, and I've got scars on my neck there, which aren't very noticeable, but obviously I know they're there. I had 5 lines sewn into my neck so that I couldn't pull them out. Of all these different machines that were doing different things for me. I had a tube down my nose into my stomach. That had to be aspirated all the time because, of course, your stomach's just producing bile all the time. So they had to aspirate that. That's disgusting. It's like green sludge. And then obviously they were feeding me through a drip as well. But to say that was a shock is an understatement. Like what it, and it's not like it is now. We'd have had our phones and cameras and stuff, and we would have took pictures, but it wasn't really like that then, and we didn't take any pictures, which I, looking back on it now, wish we had, to document it more. But I'll never forget waking up there. It was just horrendous. And then once I was properly awake, Mr. Renahan came to see me. It was probably, I don't know, 10ish the next morning. And he came in with all the team and his nurse and everything, and he's waffling on about what he'd done, on cloud nine still, so didn't really take in what he'd done. And I said to him, Mr. Renahan, and he said, yes, love. And I said, did you take my belly button? And he said, yes, love. And that was it. He were gone. And I was like, okay. I wasn't bothered about anything else. He could have took anything else, but he took my belly button. That was the biggest thing for me. And then John came, probably about, I don't know, 11ish, once he'd sorted, because Liv couldn't come in, obviously. So once he'd sorted Luke with school and sorted Olivia out, and he came in, and obviously it was a shock for him seeing all what I was attached to. But he was saying to me, how did it go? What have they done? And I'm like, and they did this, and they did this, and they took 75% of my stomach. And he was like, they took 75% of your stomach? And I was like, yeah. So he was like, right. So he went and saw the nurse who'd come in with Mr. Renahan, and she was like, no, they took 75% of a omentum, which is like the lining of your abdomen, not 75% of a stomach. So we were laughing because he were like, one chicken nugget on a date, and you'd be full. So yeah, we did laugh about that, but that part of it had never really been described what it was going to be like by the hospital. They obviously tell you the things that they're going to do, but they don't tell you what it's going to be like when you wake up. And I was in there for 3 days, and it was hard going. I've never known pain like it. Obviously, my scar was huge. It was like, I don't know, 30 centimeters, maybe longer. It's about, yeah, it's a long scar. And I could barely move because it was just so painful. But I'm going to stop there, because if I carry on, I'm going to go into tomorrow night. So thank you all for listening. It's been a hard one tonight. Talking about the letters is probably the hardest part. And writing them was just, yeah, it was devastating, really. But thank you all for listening, and thank you for joining. And I'll do the same tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, and I'll do, I think we're on 7 and 8, aren't we, tomorrow? So thanks, guys.